Captain Elara Whitmore trusted the world because she had survived its darkest corners in uniform. Arif Kandel promised celebration, family, and a wedding that never existed. One plane ticket turned confidence into silence, and a journey meant for joy into a trail with no return. Every step Elara took felt safe, until safety itself disappeared. What she discovered in a foreign land was not love, not tradition, but a truth designed to trap the strongest. This is not a story about fear. It is about trust being used as a weapon. Stay with this story until the end, because the final truth will change how you see every invitation forever. Captain Elara Whitmore had spent most of her adult life preparing for danger. She had crossed borders in uniform, moved through unfamiliar cities under strict orders, and learned how to read risk in small details most people ignored. Her life followed structure, schedules, and discipline. That was why the invitation surprised everyone who knew her, even though very few people actually knew about it. Elara was 32 years old and stationed in the United States as a logistics officer. Her work was not dramatic or loud, but it was critical. She planned supply routes, managed personnel movement, and solved problems before they became disasters. Long hours and responsibility left little room for a personal life. She had grown used to silence after work and weekends spent alone. That quiet made her open to connection when it finally arrived. The connection began online during a global cultural exchange forum meant for professionals. Elara joined out of curiosity, not expectation. Among dozens of casual conversations, one profile stood out. The man introduced himself as Arif Kandel, an Indian technology consultant with family roots in a traditional town. His messages were calm, thoughtful, and never rushed. He spoke about heritage, responsibility, and the pressure of balancing modern life with family expectations. Elara found comfort in the steady pace of those conversations. Weeks turned into months. Photos followed. Colorful streets, family gatherings, wedding decorations being prepared in advance. Everything felt warm and genuine. Arif never pushed. He never asked for money or favors. He only shared stories and listened to Hayes. For Elara, who lived in a world of orders and deadlines, this felt like breathing fresh air. When Arif mentioned an upcoming wedding in his family, it did not feel sudden. He described it as a major event that brought relatives from across the country. He spoke about traditions, rituals, and how meaningful it would be to share that experience with someone who understood him. The invitation was presented as optional, almost casual, which made it more powerful. Elara felt chosen, not pressured. At first, she laughed at the idea. Traveling alone to another country for a wedding sounded reckless. But the more she thought about it, the more reasonable it felt. She had traveled internationally for work many times. India was not unknown or forbidden. Her training told her she could handle herself. Her heart told her this was a rare chance to step outside her controlled world. Elara requested leave through official channels. The paperwork was routine and approved without concern. She told her commanding officer she was visiting friends abroad. She did not explain more because she did not feel the need to justify something that felt personal. To her family, she mentioned a short cultural trip. She avoided details, not out of secrecy, but because she wanted the experience to remain Hayes alone. In the days before departure, Elara prepared carefully. She researched customs, clothing, weather, and transportation. She packed light and practical. Her military habits never left her. She saved emergency numbers and shared her flight details with one trusted colleague. Everything appeared responsible and controlled. What no one noticed was how this trip represented something deeper. For Elara, it was not just a wedding. It was a break from being strong all the time. It was proof that life could offer moments not measured in ranks or reports. She believed she was walking towards celebration, color, and belonging. On the morning of her flight, Elara arrived early at the airport. Surveillance cameras later showed her calm expression and steady movement through the terminal. She wore casual clothes, carried one backpack, and moved with confidence. There was no sign of doubt or fear. To everyone watching, she looked like a woman starting a joyful journey. Before boarding, she posted a single photo online. It showed the airplane window glowing with sunlight and a simple caption about new memories. Friends reacted with surprise and encouragement. None of them sensed that this would be the final image she ever shared willingly. As the plane lifted into the sky, Elara leaned back in her seat, unaware that every step she had taken with trust and optimism was guiding her toward a truth far darker than anything she had faced in uniform. The celebration she imagined existed only in carefully chosen words and borrowed images, and the journey she believed would change her life was already moving toward a silence no training could prepare her for. Elara's flight landed after midnight, when the airport lights reflected sharply off polished floors and tired faces moved in slow lines. She stepped into the terminal alert but relaxed, adjusting quickly to the heavy air and unfamiliar rhythm of the place. Her passport was stamped without delay, and she passed through security with a quiet efficiency that came from years of travel. Nothing about her arrival suggested danger. Everything appeared ordinary, almost welcoming. Cameras recorded her walking alone through the arrivals area, scanning signs, checking her phone, and pausing briefly as if confirming instructions she had already memorized. She declined assistance from airport staff and ignored the hotel shuttle offers. A private car was already waiting, just as she had been told. The driver's face was never clearly captured, only the open door and Elara placing her bag inside before taking the backseat. The vehicle pulled away from the airport and merged into nighttime traffic. City lights stretched endlessly, mixing neon signs with dark streets. Elara sent a short location update through an app she rarely used, marking her arrival. That digital signal would later become one of the most important timestamps in the investigation. At the time, it felt routine, almost forgettable. The plan was simple. She would rest briefly and then travel to the wedding location by morning. The town was described as peaceful and traditional, far from tourist noise. The drive would be long but scenic. Elara expected conversations, introductions, laughter, and ceremony. Instead, the car did not stop where it should have. Her phone location showed steady movement away from the city. Hours passed. Highways turned into quieter roads, then into industrial stretches with long fences and dark silhouettes of closed factories. There were no landmarks she recognized from her research. She did not post photos. She did not message friends. This silence was later questioned, but at the time it aligned with her habit of staying focused during travel. At approximately 3 a.m, her phone connected briefly to a cell tower near an industrial zone outside Japa. The signal was weak, then lost. From that moment, there was nothing. No texts. No calls. No online activity. It was as if she had stepped off the map. Back in the United States, the absence went unnoticed. Elara was officially on leave. Her unit respected boundaries. Her family assumed she was busy attending events in a different time zone. The lack of updates did not immediately raise alarms. Silence, in her life, was normal. 3 days passed before concern began to grow. A colleague noticed her phone going straight to voicemail. A family member sent a message that remained unread. Still, there was no panic. International travel often caused delays and signal issues. Everyone believed she would resurface with stories and photos. Then something strange happened. On the 4th day, Elara's phone appeared online for less than 2 minutes. It connected to a public Wi-Fi network in a crowded area miles away from where her signal last ended. No message was sent. No call was made. Only an automatic cloud sync occurred, uploading partial location data and system logs before the phone went silent again. That brief digital breath was enough to confirm something was wrong. Local authorities were contacted. The U.S. Embassy was alerted. What started as a wellness check quickly turned into a missing person investigation. Airport footage was reviewed. Transportation records were requested. The private car company listed on her travel details did not exist. Investigators replayed the arrival footage repeatedly. Elara's calm demeanor stood out. There was no hesitation, no visible fear. Whatever happened next did not begin with chaos. It began with trust. As officials traced the last confirmed location, the area revealed nothing welcoming. Abandoned warehouses, empty lots, and long-unused roads dominated the landscape. It was a place people passed through, not a place they visited. No wedding halls. No family homes. No celebrations. The truth was becoming harder to ignore. Elara had not been delayed. She had not changed plans. She had vanished during the most vulnerable moment of any journey, the stretch between arrival and safety. And somewhere between the airport lights and the empty industrial road, the story she believed in quietly disappeared, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a growing fear that the celebration she traveled for never existed at all. The investigation moved quickly once the missing person report became international. What began as concern turned into urgency when officials realized how carefully Elara's disappearance had been timed. Inspector Rohan Malik was assigned to the case because of its complexity and sensitivity. A foreign military officer missing, without a trace, meant every mistake would be questioned, and every hour mattered. The first step was simple on paper but disturbing in practice. Investigators focused on Arif Kandel, the man Elara believed she was visiting. His name appeared nowhere in government records tied to the address he had provided. The phone number he used was registered under a temporary identity and had already gone inactive. His email address led to servers routed through multiple countries, deliberately designed to confuse tracking efforts. When Malik's team searched employment databases, no technology firm listed Arif as an employee or consultant. Tax records showed nothing. Educational institutions had no history of him as a student. It was as if the man had appeared from thin air 2 years earlier and lived only online. Social media offered the next clue. Arif's profiles looked authentic at first glance. Photos showed family gatherings, festivals, and daily life moments. But forensic analysts noticed inconsistencies. The same image appeared on unrelated accounts under different names. Background details changed subtly across posts that were supposed to be years apart. Facial recognition software confirmed what instincts already suspected. The man in the photos was real, but he was not Arif Kandel. The identity was stolen, carefully assembled like a puzzle. Each piece alone seemed harmless. Together, they created someone trustworthy. As investigators dug deeper, a pattern began to emerge. Arif's online activity matched other profiles with similar behavior. Each targeted professional women from outside India. Many were educated, independent, and used to traveling alone. The conversations followed nearly identical timelines. Friendly introductions, cultural exchange, emotional trust. Then an invitation tied to a meaningful event. Weddings, conferences, family emergencies. In most cases, the targets never traveled. Some stopped responding. Others questioned details. But a few had gone silent for weeks before resurfacing, shaken but alive. Those women reported confusing experiences, sudden changes in plans, and moments where instinct told them to leave. Elara's case stood apart because she never came back. What investigators realized next changed the direction of the case entirely. Arif was not one person. The account was operated by multiple individuals, each responsible for a different phase. One built trust. Another handled logistics. Another vanished once the target arrived. It was a system, not a mistake. The wedding itself never existed. There were no venue bookings, no caterers, no family records. Even the town name Elara had been given was slightly altered from a real location, close enough to seem legitimate, but wrong enough to prevent easy verification. Inspector Malik reviewed Elara's messages carefully. There were no obvious threats, no warnings, nothing that suggested panic. That was the most unsettling detail. Whatever happened to her did not involve confusion at first. It involved belief. Meanwhile, forensic teams examined Elara's phone data recovered from the brief Wi-Fi connection. The phone had been powered on manually, connected, then powered off again. It was not random. Someone wanted access to stored information, but did not want to leave a trail. The silence was intentional. As pressure increased, the investigation faced invisible walls. Accounts were deleted. Servers went offline. The network retreated faster than authorities could follow. Arrest became unlikely. The goal shifted from prevention to understanding. The deeper Malik went, the clearer the truth became. Elara had not been targeted because she was careless. She had been targeted because she was confident. Her independence made her predictable. Her trust made her accessible. Her strength made her valuable to people who saw human lives as resources. By the end of the third week, investigators were no longer asking whether Arif Kandel existed. They were asking how many others were still out there, believing in invitations that were never meant to be celebrated. And as evidence piled up, one question haunted everyone involved. If Elara realized the truth too late, how close had she come to stopping what happened, and how much of the story would forever remain buried with the identity that never truly lived? The break in the case did not come from technology or intelligence work. It came from chance. On the edge of an industrial district long forgotten by development plans, a construction crew began clearing land for a proposed warehouse project. The area was quiet, avoided by locals, and surrounded by rusted fencing and overgrown weeds. It was the kind of place where nothing was expected to be found. One morning, a worker noticed something unusual beneath a shallow layer of soil. The ground appeared disturbed in a narrow strip, uneven compared to the surrounding hard earth. Mixed into the dirt were scraps of fabric that did not belong to the environment. They were not old enough to be waste and not natural enough to ignore. Local police were notified, assuming it might be illegal dumping. When officers arrived and began digging, the situation changed immediately. What emerged from the ground was carefully wrapped, deliberately hidden, and positioned in a way that suggested planning rather than panic. The site was sealed within minutes. Forensic teams were called in, and the discovery was treated with extreme caution. The remains were transported under heavy security to a government facility for examination. News of the find reached Inspector Rohan Malik before the sun had fully risen. By the time he arrived, he already suspected what confirmation would bring. The clothing found with the body matched the description of what Elara had been seen wearing upon arrival. The backpack was missing. Identification documents were gone. There were no personal items that could explain the final moments. Only the remains and the silence around them. Dr. Nishu Rao led the forensic analysis. The examination revealed that death occurred within hours of Elara's arrival in the country. There were no indicators of long-term restraint or relocation. Whatever had happened was quick and decisive. The cause of death was blunt force trauma, delivered with enough force to be fatal in a short time. What stood out most was the lack of hesitation evident in the injuries. This was not accidental. It was not spontaneous. It was the result of a confrontation that escalated rapidly. Elara's physical condition suggested resistance. She had not surrendered easily. Her military training, meant to protect her, may have altered the outcome. Investigators concluded that she likely recognized the danger and attempted to fight back. That resistance disrupted the plan. Control was lost. And when control disappeared, the network chose elimination over exposure. The location itself revealed another layer of truth. The site was strategically selected. It was close enough to major roads for quick access, but isolated enough to avoid witnesses. Security cameras in the area had been disabled weeks earlier. Mobile signals were unreliable. It was not a random place. It was prepared. As forensic confirmation was completed, diplomatic channels were activated. The United States government was informed officially. Arrangements were made to repatriate Elara's remains with full military honors. The process was handled quietly, out of respect and to avoid compromising the ongoing investigation. For those working the case, the emotional weight shifted from hope to responsibility. The goal was no longer rescue. It was truth. Further analysis uncovered traces of cleaning agents at the site, suggesting an attempt to erase evidence. Tire marks indicated multiple vehicles had been involved. This was not the work of one person acting alone. It was coordinated, rehearsed, and abandoned only when it became inconvenient. Despite the severity of the discovery, no suspects were found at the scene. No fingerprints matched existing databases. DNA samples yielded no immediate results. The network had vanished as completely as the identity it created. The official report concluded that Elara Whitmore was the victim of an organized trafficking operation that failed during execution. She was not killed as the objective. She was killed because she refused to be controlled. As the site was cleared and the evidence catalogued, one reality became impossible to ignore. Elara's end was not the result of ignorance or recklessness. It was the result of trust placed in a story designed to feel safe. And while her body was finally found, the people responsible remained unseen, leaving behind a chilling reminder that some crimes are not loud or chaotic. They are quiet, planned, and hidden beneath ordinary ground, waiting for chance to uncover what intention tried so hard to erase. As the investigation reached its final phase, the truth no longer unfolded in dramatic arrests or public confessions. Instead, it emerged slowly, through patterns, missing pieces, and conclusions that felt heavier than any courtroom verdict. The people behind Elara Whitmore's disappearance were not hiding in plain sight. They were dissolving, step by step, leaving almost nothing behind. Digital forensics revealed that the identity known as Arif Kandel had been shared across multiple devices in different regions. Login times overlapped in ways that proved no single person could have controlled the account alone. Each role was separated. One group handled emotional connection. Another managed travel instructions. A third erased traces once the target arrived. It was a system designed to function without loyalty, without memory, and without accountability. The motive became clearer as international agencies compared similar cases. Elara had been selected for what she represented, not for who she was personally. She carried a powerful passport, financial independence, and the confidence to travel alone. These traits made her valuable in ways she never imagined. Strength, in this context, was mistaken for control. But the plan failed. Investigators believed the operation depended on compliance during the first hours. Elara's refusal to submit, her attempt to resist, disrupted the timeline. When control slipped, the network made a decision that could not be undone. She was silenced to protect the system. The most heartbreaking detail came from recovered data on her phone. Among routine files were notes saved during her flight. Short reflections about culture, curiosity, and stepping outside comfort zones. They were not messages to anyone else. They were reminders to herself. They showed optimism, not fear. Those words ended mid-sentence. Authorities traced the network across borders, but cooperation ended where jurisdiction began. Accounts vanished. Digital wallets were emptied. Communication channels collapsed overnight. The people responsible did not need to escape. They simply stopped existing under the names they had used. With no arrest to announce, the case shifted into a warning. Training materials were updated. Travel advisories emphasized online deception. Elara's story was shared quietly among security and diplomatic circles as an example of modern exploitation that did not rely on force alone. Her family received answers but no justice. They were given timelines, reports, and carefully worded conclusions. What they were not given was a face to blame. Grief had nowhere to land. Elara's remains were returned to the United States under a folded flag. The ceremony was private. Medals were placed beside a photograph taken years earlier, showing her in uniform, calm and focused. She was honored as a soldier who served with dedication, even though her final battle occurred far from any recognized battlefield. The case remains open, not because investigators believe arrests are imminent, but because closing it would imply resolution. There is none. Somewhere, similar accounts still exist, waiting patiently, refining their stories, learning from mistakes. Elara Whitmore's journey began with trust and ended with truth that arrived too late. Her story is not about fear of travel or suspicion of kindness. It is about how carefully crafted narratives can bypass even the strongest instincts. She did everything right according to her understanding of the world. She prepared. She researched. She trusted logic and experience. What she could not defend against was a lie designed to feel human. In the end, the wedding was never real. The names were never true, and the invitation was never meant to be celebrated. It was a doorway built from words and images, leading to a place where silence was the final response. And as viewers reach the end of this story, one question lingers, heavy and unresolved. How many others are reading messages right now, believing in celebrations that do not exist, unaware that the most dangerous journeys sometimes begin with nothing more than a promise that feels safe?